Hello, everyone, and welcome into Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. For the final time here in the 2023 season, the 2023 calendar year. We are spread out all over the place, most of us in South Florida. Normally, it's Dari Pera who's on the road, while the rest of us are back home. I guess for this particular week, Dari is back home. The rest of us kind of on the road here, getting ready for Georgia and Florida State in the Orange Bowl, and getting ready for this show today where we make our official picks against the spread for the first time this year. One of the rare times ever. Also doing this show live today, so people get a chance to join us. We may even have a little comment interaction here as we make our picks against the spread. Of course, the live show coming to you a little earlier than it normally does. So perhaps some folks seeing Go with the Flow presented by RS Andrews for the very first time here. So if you are, let me explain to you how this is all going to work, and would certainly invite you to be a part of this show again next year. We normally air Friday evenings leading into a football weekend. In just a moment, a large portion of the DawgNation team, Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, myself, going to get a chance to make some picks for the big weekends with the bowl games against the spread, including Georgia and Florida State, the college football playoff semifinal games. And once we make our picks on that, a consensus is formed. And then Dari Payro, our great friend from RS Andrews, we will ask him if he wants to join that consensus, or as we say around here, go with the flow. And as Dari makes his picks, we obviously invite you to make your picks there with us. Now, if you've been tailing us here this year, you've perhaps made a little bit of money. Pretty strong year here for the group overall, and a strong year indeed for Dari Payro. We mentioned a moment ago who was of the season-long standings here, with one big final week to go. In fact, let's take a look at this here right now. Updated. It seems like 7 years ago we made our picks for conference championship weekend, but going back then, Dari and I both going 3-3 for the week. But Dari right now, a 1-game advantage on me for the year at 47-35-2. Me, as I said before, a game back of that, 46-36-2. Connor Riley, after a 5-1 week during during conference championship week, goes 5-1, puts him at 45-37-2 for the year, which actually puts him right there in the conversation to actually win the season-long race there as well. Jeff Sintel, 3-3, going back to the first weekend in December, puts him dead even on the year, 41-41-2. And then Mike Griffith, after a winning week, 4-2, puts him at 39-43-2. So everybody's got a chance to get above 500 for the season, which would be nice. And for Dari, Connor, and myself, kind of a battle here at the top to see who perhaps steps up and wins the entire season-long campaign here. Anybody's race here. We have 6 big games to pick here coming up. That is going to be a lot of fun. Of course, all of it brought to you by our friends at RS Andrews, the choice of DawgNation for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. It's been pretty warm down here in South Florida. Not maybe as warm as I would like for it to be, but still pretty warm nonetheless. Back home, though, in the state of Georgia, a little bit cold. And that reminds you that long winter's still here to come as we turn our attention to 2024. And of course, as you begin the new year, a great way to begin that new year is toasty and warm with a heating system tuned back up to factory fresh specs to get you through that long, cold winter that we still have to endure here. RS Andrews can help you out with that. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. That's rsandrews.com. And of course, great to have Dari Payro and everybody at RS Andrews bringing Go with the Flow for us all season long. All right, so with all of that said, let's dive in here and get ready to make some picks for the big games here this weekend, obviously starting with what's going to take place tomorrow afternoon in Miami, the Orange Bowl, 4 p.m. start there at Hard Rock Stadium, as the Florida State Seminoles, you know the story with the Noles, 13-0, but excluded from the college football playoff. First time ever that a Power 5 undefeated conference champion was left out of the playoff. That's still a source of much consternation from everybody from Tallahassee. Florida State coach Mike Norvell talking about that even today. On the flip side of that, Georgia also disappointed about its postseason status there as well, missing out on the college football playoff after a 3-point loss to Alabama, and forced this week to talk some about what went wrong against the Crimson Tide. But both sides hoping they can make some things work out on the right side here in this Orange Bowl. But Georgia sees itself as a massive favorite. 2 touchdowns when the game was first announced, has now ballooned all the way up to 20 points on the wind of a lot of opt-outs here for Florida State. This is a Seminoles team expected to be far less than full strength, of course, including now down to a third-string quarterback once again. So with the number sitting at 20 points, Mike Griffith, we start with you, as we always do. Your pick for the Orange Bowl, Dogs favored by 20 against FSU.
Yeah, Brandon, it certainly looks like Georgia has all the momentum. Georgia, of course, the first number one team to drop out of the top four in the final weekend of a season. So that was also unprecedented. And as Kirby said, there's a bit of a hornet's nest at Georgia, too. Some upset and disappointed players that felt like maybe they were one of the four best teams in the nation. 27-24 loss, not the way a lot of these guys wanted to end their careers. And so they stuck together. They're opting in. Bucky National thing the Kirby has built, and if Kirby wants to keep his foot on the gas, I don't have any doubt they win easily by 20. The question is, when does he pull the starters, and when does he start running clock? I think because of the ring over in North Florida, I think this is something that Kirby Smart will make a point to win impressively. It's also the start of Carson Beck's 2024 Heisman Trophy campaign, as he'll have a national television audience all to himself. All those things lead me to believe that 20 points isn't enough. So give me the Dogs and give Florida State 20.
A lot of love from Mike Griffith there on the Georgia side here. Jeff, in your eyes, is it that easy for Georgia tomorrow afternoon?
Guys, I think it's easy peasy. I thought Georgia was 14 points better than a fully stocked Florida State team, much less this team. I think the Dogs will win this one handily. Give me the Dogs to definitely cover that 20 spot.
So easy so far. Connor, how about for you? Georgia minus 20 in this spot.
I do. Carson Beck's had a really strong week of practice down here from talking to people around the Georgia program. And when you factor in that Florida State isn't just on their third string quarterback in Brock Glenn, they're also missing their top three pass catchers as well. I struggle to see how Florida State is going to score enough to keep up in this game, even with some of the, potential, how long does Kamari Lassiter play? What do we see on Malachi Starks? I think this might be a game where I think if Georgia can get to 21, they might be able to cover this spread, and I do think they're going to be able to do that. So give me Georgia here, minus 20.
DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers agree. We've probably never seen, virtually 99% of respondents here thus far taking Georgia minus the 20 here in this spot. I'm going to take Georgia here as well, but I do want to caution just a little bit about the prevailing narrative of the week that no one's playing for Florida State and virtually everyone's playing for Georgia. In actuality, I don't know how true that really is. Obviously, a lot of Georgia players are saying all the right things about, wanting to play and wanting to be a part of it. Connor mentioned Kamari Lassiter by name a moment ago. He's clearly one that's doing that. But I think some of this may be more about enhancing perception as opposed to actually reflecting reality. In other words, it may be true that so-and-so is playing, but is he playing for all four quarters? Does he sort of disappear somewhere mid-second quarter? We don't see him again. And the balance of this game, is this an example of two teams, perhaps are a little bit more similar in terms of their absences than not? So I'm going to take Georgia minus the 20, but I'm always cautious when everybody seems to think the same thing and everybody seems to think that Florida State's just going to show up with a barnstorming bunch of, a couple of dozen guys. And by comparison, I don't know that Georgia's going to be for the full game quite as much more at full strength than maybe the perception sort of suggests. So I'm hemming and hawing, but ultimately taking the same pick that everybody else is making there as well. I'll take Georgia minus the 20, but I would caution that nothing is ever easy when it comes to predictions, and especially a game like this. So, Dari, it is a clean sweep on the side of Georgia. You want to go with the flow and take the Dogs minus 20 against the Noles.
I mean, going back and forth on this, 20's a lot to lay. It's a big number, regardless of who's playing. I'm gonna lean and take Georgia to cover that. I think Georgia will start out fast and get a pretty good lead, but as this game goes on in the second half, it's kind of a toss up as to what happens. Florida State still has a lot of their guys on defense playing. I just hope Georgia can get a big lead and hold it, and would love nothing more than a Georgia blowout here.
Obviously love to see that there as well. And that's what the expectation is from this panel anyway. Everybody on the side of the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll step outside of UGA here for a moment, but we'll stay in the SEC and the first of our New Year's Six games, which will kick off actually tonight for those of you watching this live on a Friday afternoon. Arlington, Texas, the Cotton Bowl, as Missouri, fresh off a 10-win regular season, gets ready to take on Ohio State. Now, this is where we enter into the discussion of not quite knowing in some respects who is and isn't playing. Obviously, one of the big headlines around the Buckeyes is the uncertain status of Marvin Harrison Jr. We know it'll be Devin Brown at quarterback after Kyle McCord stepped away from the team. A couple of other top players from Ohio State have stated their intentions to play. The Buckeyes do see themselves as a relatively small favorite here, a 4.5-point nod for Ohio State against Missouri here. So in a Big Ten SEC battle, Mike, we go back to you in the Cotton Bowl. Buckeyes favored by 4.5. What do you want to do with this one?
Yeah, Brandon. I mean, I was feeling an Ohio State vibe on this until the news about Marvin Harrison downgraded to doubtful for this game. I mean, a guy that's just opting out. I know their quarterback's in the portal. I just feel like Ohio State has a different level and a different quality of player than Missouri across the board. And yet what we saw from Missouri firsthand was it was a very physical team that was able to run the football, that was in position to pull an upset over Georgia in Sanford Stadium for a second year in a row. You know, in that 29-game win streak that Georgia had, which we really haven't even delved that deeply into the historic value and some of the unprecedented accomplishments, but there was only 4 of those 29 games that were decided by single digits, and Missouri accounted for 2 of those 4. Georgia Tech, the other one, and then again Ohio State. Those are your 4 single-digit games during that 29-game win streak. So even though I don't know that Missouri knows how to handle the moment, even though I think Ohio State has a better quality of player across the board, you know, that Missouri running back was so impressive. The fact that Marvin Harrison, apparently, you know, we've been told over and over Ohio State can't win without him. That's the reason their fans get for losing to Georgia. So riding that vibe, give me Missouri with the points in this game.
So, Mike, on the side of the underdog, plus 4.5 in Arlington here tonight. Jeff Sintel, how about you? Cotton Bowl, Missouri, Ohio State. The spread is 4.5.
Yeah, this is an interesting game for me, guys. I do agree with what Mike said there about Ohio State has a greater caliber of player. But for me, I just think you've got so many unknowns and newness around Ohio State, moving the ball with a new quarterback, moving the ball with perhaps Marvin Harrison not on the field. And you've got Missouri, who's kind of intact, kind of keeping some of their pieces together the way they won football games. We saw how good of a football team.
I think we may have lost Jeff Sintel right there. We'll come back and get, I guess, the rest of his pick there in a moment. I couldn't actually tell which direction he was going there on that. Connor, how about for you? Cotton Bowl action here right now.
Yeah, I think Jeff was leaning in the way of Missouri, which is perfect because I am picking Ohio State here. I know they don't have Marvin Harrison potentially, but Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, they still have a lot of really talented wide receivers. And Missouri's not going to have Tyrone Hopper, one of their star linebackers. They're not going to have Ennis Rakestraw, an NFL-level corner out there. I think that's enough. And Ohio State has been in this spot before, you know, against Utah, I think in 2021. There was some question about the motivation level for that game. Ohio State goes on to win that game that day against a very motivated Utah team. So give me Ohio State here minus the 4.5.
DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers also on the side of Ohio State here, but not by a wide margin, 64% on the Buckeyes here in this spot. I will tell you that if I could only watch one non-UGA or perhaps non-playoff bowl game, I believe Missouri-Ohio State for the entirety of bowl season probably is the most interesting game in my mind. I think this is a Missouri team that next year feels like it could be potentially a part of a 12-team playoff and would have been a part of a 12-team playoff had it existed this year. On the flip side of that, it's been really interesting watching the vibe around Ohio State, where when Kyle McCord first announced he was transferring, he's going to Syracuse, I expected them to go into the portal and bring in a big name, you know, and thus far that hasn't happened. It seems like this game for the Buckeyes is a little bit of an audition for Kyle, I should say, Devin Brown, excuse me, Devin Brown. I've always have a hard time with that name, but Devin Brown to potentially be the starting quarterback for next season. Now, quarterback wearing number 33, I think is a travesty, but nonetheless, that is what he's going to try to do, is be the Buckeye starting quarterback for next season. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes. As Connor mentioned, Emeka Egbuka's playing, Denzel Burke, top cornerback, kind of playing in this spot there as well. But for the most part, Missouri's at almost complete full strength. I think that the folks that cover the Missouri program pretty closely will say that the Tigers are only expected to be without 2 starters here in this game. So Missouri seems to have the motivational edge here, but I would also caution people that's already baked into this price. If Missouri wasn't more motivated, they'd be a much larger underdog right now than they are. So there is no blind bet in bowl season. Just because Missouri by appearance is more motivated, the point spread already accounts for that. That's why Ohio State's only a 4.5-point favorite. But that said, it's still enough to get me to like the Tigers here in this spot. They've never won a New Year's Six game. I think that's a pretty big deal for a Missouri program program. I think that alone makes the Cotton Bowl a lot bigger deal for Missouri than it is for Ohio State. That's not enough of a reason necessarily to stake a big financial, stake on an outcome like this, but it's enough for me to take a flyer on them in a contest like the one we're having here right now. In other words, I like Missouri plus the 4.5 here in this spot. Flow, though, on the side of Ohio State. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Buckeyes?
No, I like Missouri here. I've been impressed with them all year. Big games, they played well. Even if, this game, may come down to kind of a last possession and, like a field goal type game. So getting points here, I like it. I think Missouri can win this game outright. Ohio State's always done well in these type of games under Ryan Day, but there's just something about this Missouri team that I think the rest of the country is going to see kind of how good they are. And if you look at Luther Burden's been kind of talking about it all week, how this is going to be his moment. This is the moment that he's been dreaming of as a kid on this stage. Ohio State hasn't played a wide receiver like him coming out of the slot with his quickness. Good. And I think they're gonna be challenged with stopping him. I think he's gonna have a monster game tonight.
By the way, Mike Mazel's got Missouri winning this game by 7 points. Fun to be able to interact and see people's comments, taking their picks live as we do this show here today. A little bit of a different thing for our final broadcast of the year. And you hear a strong pick there from Dari Payro, also mentioning what could happen for Luther Burden here. I think that's a compelling storyline here and there as well. Seems like it matters more to Missouri, and perhaps that's enough to take Mizzou here in this spot. We'll keep it going. SEC versus Big Ten battle. Turn our attention to early Saturday afternoon in Atlanta, the Peach Bowl, as Ole Miss and Penn State get ready to do battle. Two teams that are pretty similar in terms of their overall narrative. Ole Miss beat all the teams it was supposed to, but lost to the two best teams that played, Georgia and Alabama. Conversely, that's what Penn State does literally every single year. Michigan and Ohio State, once again, an example of that for the Nittany Lions here this season. They do travel down to Atlanta in SEC country, as James Franklin has kind of called it here this week, for that battle against the Ole Miss Rebels, and the idea that Ole Miss and a couple of the star players that will put out there tomorrow may come back in 2024. Jackson Dart, maybe, Quinshon Judkins, possibly, as a part of what could be, once again, to further the narrative we said about Missouri, an SEC team that really eyes a great chance to be a part of a 12-team playoff there in 2024. But as far as today goes and this weekend goes, it's Ole Miss as a 4.5-point underdog to Penn State here in the spot. Nittany Lions the favorite in Atlanta. Mike Griffith, we go back to you. Penn State and Ole Miss, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, this line's shifted pretty dramatically in favor of Penn State. That means those guys in Vegas, for them to make money, and generally speaking, that would mean an Ole Miss win. Ole Miss has not played well in the last couple bowl games. They lost the last couple. Real contrast in coaches between Lane Kiffin and James Franklin. Obviously, you think of Penn State as some old traditional power, and yet they really haven't won anything in the Big Ten. Probably one of the more overrated traditions in college football. Ole Miss on the come up, a lot of energy and excitement, a lot of people coming in through the portal. Brandon mentioned the potential retention of Jackson Dart. I'm going to take Ole Miss in this indoor game, and the Rebels. I just think there's a better vibe and a better flow. And I think Penn State is perennially one of the more overrated programs in the country.
So, Mike, on the side of Ole Miss here in this spot, Jeff Sintel will come back to you. And first, give us a confirmation, just a quick one-word answer. Did you take Missouri with your last pick? And if you did, let's move on, and let's let you make a pick in the Peach Bowl here or there as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My signaling issues here is kind of like the Ohio State offensive play callers and game plan right now. Not sure what they have, not sure what they're going with. Yeah, I'm taking Missouri in that game. I bet it sounded like I was leaning there, but I just think Missouri's defensive lines are all that. Defensive line is all that. As far as Penn State and Ole Miss go, you got two traditional powers here. I'd like Penn State to win this game. I just think they got a little bit more to play for. They feel like they've got a team that was really, really good, but just didn't show it against the two biggest games of the year. I like Penn State to come down south, come down to SEC country, as you said, and get the win here in this game.
I got to ask a question. We're all in the same hotel. Could not be less important. But we're all in the same hotel. How is it that Jeff's signal is so much worse than the rest of ours? I don't understand that, but I do find it funny. All right, Connor, the pick is yours now after a little bit of a split decision there from our two scribes.
Yeah, I'm going to take Penn State here. If you look at the portal additions that Ole Miss has made, they've been primarily on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you only need to look back to what happened to them against Georgia to see that there. Now, obviously, Drew Allar has been allergic to explosive plays, downfield passing plays, and I think that really hurt them against Ohio State and Michigan. But I like Penn State to go out here, make a statement, and we're going to do the whole same old song and dance next year about how this is the year Penn State breaks through and makes it into the playoff riding high. They've won 21 straight games against teams not named Michigan or Ohio State. I like them to make it 22, and I like them to cover the spread here as well on Saturday.
DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers on the side of Ole Miss here in this spot, 71% like the Rebels here when it comes to this game in the Peach Bowl. Once again, I'm going to kind of put my finger to the air here and try to judge motivation because it's really about all you can do here. Ole Miss is obviously seeking its first 11-win season in program history. So from that standpoint, they seemingly have something to play for. But Connor mentioned the really active, offseason that Ole Miss has already had, very aggressive in bringing guys in the transfer portal. That leads me to believe, I don't know if this game means much to Ole Miss one way or another. They seem to already have a lot of energy towards 2024. So therefore, I think you put the kind of motivational edge on the side of Penn State, who, as Mike pointed out, this is a team, certainly the James Franklin era, that's just done nothing. They never beat any kind of marquee opponent. They never get anything that sort of feels like any kind of signature win. Franklin's not been terrible in bowl games. He's 4-4 straight up. He's 5-3 against the spread. You don't probably read much into that. There's recent high-profile opt-out. Johnny Dixon, good cornerback for Penn State, not playing. They've also had major changeover with coordinators. Tom Allen's in. Manny Diaz, new head coach at Duke. They're switching over offensive coordinators there as well. Coordinator absences typically don't make a big difference in these bowl games for whatever reason. So I'm going to once again kind of lean on the motivational edge. I just believe that Penn State needs a big win in a game like this, more so than Ole Miss probably does. And so therefore, if they need it more, they're likely to get it, I believe. I don't have a strong feeling on this, but it's worth the pick, I believe. Penn State minus the 4.5 here in this spot. That puts the flow on the side of the folks from Mount Nittany there as well. So, Dart, you want to go with the flow and take the game from Happy Valley?
No, I mean, I'm not betting on James Franklin anymore against any real opponent. You look at his record against top 25 teams. He's played 37 times against top 25 teams. His record's 12-25. He is not good against elite talent. He's going to face an Ole Miss team that's going to light up the scoreboard and light up his defense that's skewed with stats against really weak Big Ten awful teams. Ole Miss is going to win this outright. I love Ole Miss. Money line all day.
There you go. So very emphatic pick from Dari Barrow, and we like it when that happens. So we'll keep the conversation going here, and we'll keep it the same theme going here there as well, looking ahead to this weekend with Iowa and Tennessee taking place. This is the Tampa Bowl game. It's not called the Outback Bowl anymore, but in my heart, it'll always be the Outback Bowl. Obviously, the big headline here as the Hawkeyes get ready to take on the Vols is the very late last-minute opt-out of Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton, setting the stage for Nico Imaleva to make his first start there for the Tennessee Vols. And, of course, the Brian Ferentz era, much to the chagrin of Connor Riley, comes to an end after this game in Tampa there as well. So it is Iowa against Tennessee, with the Vols standing there as a 6.5-point favorite in a game slated to take place there in Tampa coming up on Monday at 1 p.m. So, Mike, back to you. Tennessee and Iowa. What do you want to do?
Yeah, the way the bets are trending, you would think that the people in Vegas would be happy if Tennessee covered, but not only the quarterback opting out, but their two top tailbacks are opting out. It just feels like this is moving in the wrong direction for Tennessee. I'm not convinced their quarterback, Nico, who was all that, whenever they signed him for however many $1 million reportedly. I don't have a good feel for this for Tennessee. They did play really well against Clemson last year and shocked me. And I do think Josh Heupel is a really good coach, and I think he's their future. But Iowa, coming off that loss to Michigan, I think the last time they won a game, they beat a Nebraska program in search of a prolific future star quarterback that once played at Buford. I'm going to go with Iowa. I don't know why, just a gut feeling. Tennessee with this young quarterback starting and their two best running backs out. I don't think that bodes well.
So, Mike, on the side of the Iowa Hawkeyes here, Jeff Sintel, how about for you?
Hey, Brandon. Man, to answer your previous chuckling question, it's usually a case of having a lot of programs open on my laptop, and that's about the only thing I can put my finger on in terms of shutting everything down so the signal remains strong. And also, the script here for our live show definitely said my signal was going to drop 6 times.
Sure.
Speaking of something that's not going to drop is I think I like Tennessee in this game. I think it's a big start to the Nico era. I think he's going to fling the ball around during his time in Tennessee. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country coming out. Really talented player, played a lot of volleyball, big guy, very athletic. And when you've got a 5-star quarterback on the Tennessee side, that's like mountains more firepower than what Iowa has. I think FPI has Tennessee a lot higher than Iowa. I like Tennessee to win this game. I like them to win it big.
So Jeff Centel on the side of the Tennessee Vols, once again, split decision. And Connor, we come to you to break the tie on that.
It's the end of an era here. This is going to be Brian Ferentz's final game as the offensive coordinator at Iowa. Just a thrilling track record in his time there. One of my favorite college football teams to watch and bet on over the years. The over-under for this game is 35.5. Quite frankly, I think that's a little insulting for a man of Brian Ferentz's talents here. Look, they're going to be playing hard for him. This is an Iowa team that finds ways to win games, to cover spreads, and go under, which we love that here. So I don't just love Iowa plus the 6.5 here. I like Iowa on the money line and the under here as well. Give me the Hawkeyes to win one last time for Brian Ferentz.
DawgNation daily listeners and viewers on the other side, they do like Tennessee to the tune of 79%. However, I think that Connor's on the right side of this when it comes to Iowa. Look, you can make all the jokes you want to about the struggles they've had on offense, as obviously been well documented. And I am pretty fascinated about the debut here, at least in starting form, for the Vols quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. I think that's a pretty compelling storyline for this game. I'm here to tell you, though, the Iowa defense legitimately is very good, and they are legitimately capable of confounding a quarterback who just hasn't played very much here this year. So of all of the potential edges you could see in bowl season, the Iowa defense against a first-time starter, to me, that's the most basic edge of all here. And you also get the benefit of getting about a touchdown's worth of spread value here there as well. Of all the picks we're going to make, I probably like Iowa about as much as any pick. I'm probably about as confident about that. If this was like one of those old school like bowl confidence type pools, I'd have Iowa pretty high here on this, at least in terms of covering the 6.5. Outright win, I don't know. But covering the 6.5 with that defense against a rookie quarterback, yeah, you better believe I like Iowa here a lot. And that puts the flow on the side of the Hawkeyes there as well. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Iowa?
Yeah, I like the Hawkeyes here for all the reasons everyone has stated. I if I'm actually, playing this on my own, I would move that line to at least 7 or 7.5. But I do like Iowa to cover in this game.
All right, so that is that. Dari Payro on the side of the Iowa Hawkeyes, and now we get a chance to step out and look at the college football playoff semifinals. Before we do that, though, I will remind you once again, our show brought to you by R.S. Andrews, your choice for air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs as you move through and move towards that New Year's Eve holiday weekend. Don't let that weekend be ruined by a water heater that goes out or some sort of plumbing issue. R.S. Andrews can be your emergency call if something like that happens. And in many cases, they can replace that water heater for you the same day. So please make sure you find them online at rsandrews.com for more on that. That's rsandrews.com for more on that. All right, we're obviously, at least I am, very disappointed that we're not talking about Georgia in the college football playoff here right now, but we do have 2 games to talk about and 2 more official picks to make that will count for our season-long standings. We start in Pasadena, California, the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, a very traditional Rose Bowl team. Michigan against a not quite so traditional Rose Bowl team, Alabama, but the Alabama Crimson Tide did win a national championship here going back to 2009 in the BCS title game. So they've been in Rose Bowl Stadium before, but they see themselves as a short underdog here to Michigan. 1.5 is the number here. Michigan favored against Alabama. Of course, the Wolverines, marching through undefeated with much controversy in the Big Ten here this year. And Alabama, by virtue of the win against Georgia in the SEC championship, punching the ticket for the Crimson Tide on the benefit of the miracle 4th and 31 play in the Iron Bowl against Auburn to set themselves up to stay alive for all of that. So it's Bama and Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Wolverines, a short 1.5 favorite here. Mike Griffith, how about you? Your pick for the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I really waver on this pick, I guess, because I feel like it comes down to Jalen Milroe, and he's been extremely inconsistent. The Jalen Milroe that we saw against Auburn was not the Jalen Milroe that executed 2 fourth down conversions and broke a 30-yard run on that Georgia defense. And we keep having all these people ask about the Georgia offense here. Nobody wants to ask what happened to the defense and their collapse in that game. I think the Michigan defense is better, and I think this is going to come right down to the wire. I hate to pick against Alabama simply because they've got such a proven track record, and picking for Michigan because Jim Harbaugh has a proven track record of choking in the postseason, and yet I can't escape the feeling that this is set up for Michigan to win. So I don't say this with a deep voice, Brandon, but I will take Michigan for the purposes of our program.
All right, so Mike on the side of the Michigan Wolverines. Jeff Sintel, how about for you?
Yeah, give me Alabama in this one, guys. I'll take the 1.5 points. I think secondary, I think skill guys, I think line of scrimmage, quality of opponents Alabama has played. It feels like a familiar script. But give me the Alabama Crimson Tide to roll on in this one. And, again, put Michigan's fan base, their great alumni network, in a not-so-happy place come bowl season.
All right, so Jeff Sintel, once again, a split decision here. And Connor Riley, one more time, would come to you to break the tie.
I wanted to pick Michigan here, but hearing Mike, make his case for it, this line is fishy to me. I think Alabama probably should be favored, and the fact that they're not is a little concerning to me. But Alabama is an underdog. Look, it worked out in the SEC championship game. I think it's going to work out again. I really struggle to see how Michigan is going to really move the ball in this Alabama defense because I just don't think they have the skill players at running back and wide receiver to really take advantage of that. And you saw what Alabama did to Georgia's skill players in that game. So give me Alabama here, plus 1.5.
DawgNation daily listeners and viewers also on the side of Alabama, not by a wide margin necessarily, 67%, but about 2/3 there favoring the Crimson Tide. And look, my take on this is about as square as it possibly can be. Obviously, Michigan, Connor mentioned the fishy line. Michigan has been, if you follow the Vegas power ratings and things like that, Michigan has been power rated as the top team in the country all year long. One of the few teams in America that probably the only team in America. In fact, it was the only team in America that would have been a point spread favorite against Georgia here this year. Michigan for most of the year, based on the available kind of power ratings that were out there, Michigan would have been the favorite. So that's why they're still getting the point spread respect against Alabama here right now. But my square pick is, I really do believe that Michigan has just benefited from the cheating scandal. I really do. I think their results have been less impressive since that came to light. And that's enough to make me very suspicious of the kind of power rating that Alabama has earned. As Mike pointed out, we've also seen Jim Harbaugh have 2 cracks here in national semifinal games. They've lost both, and frankly, both in pretty unimpressive fashion here. So I think this sets up to be Alabama. And obviously for Michigan, there's a lot on the line because if they could win it, and they can put the entire Connor Stallions thing to bed because they clearly would not have used Stallions to beat Alabama. But for now, I just see a Michigan team that seemed to play better when they seem to have extra information about the opponent that they're playing. And that makes me very suspicious of them in this spot. I like Alabama plus the 1.5. I think it's worth noting that the half point here is, I think, valuable enough not to necessarily go money line. I think that a 1 point victory is a fairly common outcome here. So I like the 1.5 specifically, more so than just Bama money line. But nonetheless, I am on the side of Alabama, and that puts the flow on the side of Alabama there as well. Dari Payro, you want to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide?
I'd love nothing more than, Alabama to win this game and, win a national championship. So, I think Saban would retire if he was able to get another championship, and that would be awesome. Just kind of clear the way and put an end to his era. But I'm going to take Michigan here to win and cover this game. I'm hoping for Alabama to do it, but from a betting standpoint, I'm going to take Michigan to cover.
There you go. So Dari Payro kind of playing against type here by going on the side of the Michigan Wolverines there after many years of being a pretty frequent Bama backer in situations like this. The other national semifinal game takes us to Monday night in New Orleans, a game that Georgia could have been playing in, but obviously not. Instead, we see Texas for the final time in the Big 12 as the Big 12's conference champion against the undefeated Washington Huskies, who no one really had, at least for the most part, no one had, beating Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. Oregon was a pretty big favorite there, despite the fact that Oregon had lost the first matchup. But it was Washington who found a way to get it done. They also find their way into the postseason here as an undefeated team, and for the first time since 2016 to be back in the college football playoff, their second entry into the event overall. But they see themselves as an underdog by 4 points against Texas in New Orleans. So it's the Longhorns and the Huskies, our final official pick for this show and this season. Mike Griffith, we come back to you one more time.
Yeah, these teams actually played in the Alamo Bowl last year, and Washington won by a touchdown and was able to run the ball pretty effectively. And to me, that's where I think Texas has gotten so much better this year at the line of scrimmage. And we saw them beat Alabama by 10 in Tuscaloosa. That was not a fluke. However, it took a couple of amazing Quinn Ewers throws. Of course, Adonai Mitchell, the Alabama killer, we saw him beat Alabama when he was at Georgia. He scored 2 more touchdowns against Alabama this year in Tuscaloosa. Things would seem to point to a Texas win. And yet this Washington team has so much speed on the perimeter, and Michael Penix has been such a fantastic story. When you look at a guy that's fought through injuries, a snub of getting a scholarship pulled at Tennessee, the storyline is just too irresistible for me. Watching Washington beat those Dan Lanning Oregon Ducks twice was very impressive. Impressive enough that I'm going to take the Huskies and the points in this game.
Wow, a little bit of a contrarian play there on the side of Mike. Jeff Centel, how about for you?
Yeah, guys, I think this one was the toughest game for me to pick on this docket. There's a lot of moving parts. I really like Washington's team, really like Penix. Love the way he spins the ball. I got to see him throw it all over the place, hitting trash cans, throwing dots at the Elite 11 camp this past June in California. Washington's got a great line of scrimmage. Washington can run the ball. Came really close to just touting that I think Huskies are going to win this one outright. But here's what I do think for my official pick. Give me Washington the 4 points. Not sure if they win the game, but I like those tasty 4 points. And what should shape up is the best of the 2 college football playoffs this weekend.
So Jeff also on the side of the Washington Huskies here. A little bit of a surprise for me here thus far on this. Connor, you want to join these guys on the Huskies?
Look, I was the only person on this panel that had Washington in the college football playoff at the start of the season here, America's premier Pac-12 tout. But I'm taking the Horns here. I think this defensive line it has caused some major problems for teams this year. It did so for Alabama earlier. I think you're going to see that against Washington in this game. I know they've got some injuries at the running back position, Texas does, but I like what they have. Adonai Mitchell, 4 college football playoff games, 4 touchdowns. I like him to make it 5 after this game. So give me the Longhorns here, -4.
DawgNation daily listeners and viewers also on the side of Texas. Not a huge margin, though, 65% on the side of the Longhorns. Connor was right. His season-long pick was Washington, the college football playoff. My season-long pick was Texas. We were on the Longhorns to begin here. I have been impressed by what I've seen. It's not just Quinn Ewers at quarterback and the talent wide receivers. Connor said it's probably also the best defensive line, I believe, in the college football playoff. And that's enough for me to kind of back the Longhorns here. This is another game I'm pretty confident in. I just like Texas a lot, but also be cautious here by the fact that I've also been wrong about Washington over and over and over again. And I am a little bit curious to see, the version of Penix we saw in September, he didn't really play that way in October, November. He was either playing worse or injured. There's a very good chance he was hurt. Well, now post Pac-12 title game, we've seen him have a lot of time to rest. I almost wonder, is the version of Michael Penix we see here a little bit more in keeping with what we saw from him back in September? That could be curious to see. And if so, that kind of changes the complexion of this game for me a little bit. But nonetheless, I've been on Texas from the beginning. I see no reason to hop off this bandwagon right now. I like Texas minus the 4 points, and I like the idea of a national championship rematch from the regular season with Texas and Alabama coming up in Houston shortly after that. But for now, it's Texas minus the 4, which is my pick, and that puts the flow on the side of the Longhorns there as well. Dari Pero, how about for you? Your pick. Do you want to go with the flow and take Texas?
I mean, I can't. I don't think they're one of the best 4 teams in the country. I don't think they belong in the playoffs. they've had a lot of victories against subpar Big 12 teams that they squeaked out a victory of. Their offense has kind of come around as of late, but I can't take them against Washington. I love getting points here with Washington. I think Washington will be in this game all the way to the end with Penix and their offense. So, no lead is safe. I think it's tight all game long. I think Texas is going to hit hard by Washington on both sides of the ball. I think the intensity level is going to favor Washington. I think they're on a mission at least to get to that national championship game with this team. It's kind of been like that all the feeling. Even though this is a home game for Texas, the CFP committee kind of put them in the Sugar Bowl, knowing that they would kind of a home game for them. I think the game's kind of fixed to lead the calls for them because they probably want Texas in the finals for money, for eyeballs on the game. But there you go. I like Washington and the points.
So should be a very interesting college football playoff, even if Georgia fans are lamenting the fact that the Dogs are not there. And that kind of brings our official picks to a close for today. 2 from the college football playoff semifinals and some New Year's Six action, including obviously Georgia and Florida State in the Orange Bowl. And for one more time, we'll kind of expand the rise and left of the remaining bowl games and find out if there are any best bet picks from the rest of the slate that's out there, or perhaps a different angle on some of the games we've already discussed. Mike Griffith, how about for you? For the last time here in 2023, you have a best bet pick in addition to the picks we've already made?
Yeah, I know my picks this year, really have been daffy at times and not what they were cracked up to be. So I have to go with an Oregon pick here, along with some really bad puns. They're playing the Liberty Flames, and I think they'll extinguish Jamie Chadwell's team out there in the desert. So give me Oregon minus the 16.5, and then just looking at another game that I really like, and that's Notre Dame against Oregon State. And I got some information today related to Florida State, actually, that made me decide to go with the Irish here. Apparently, the reason, this was what a Florida State insider told me, the reason why the Florida State backup quarterback opted out is because DJ Uiagalelei came out on a visit to Florida State, and it upset the Florida State backup quarterback. So if he's visiting there, that tells me, and I guess I hadn't been paying close enough attention, he's not going to be playing for Oregon State. So I'm going to take Notre Dame -5 over Oregon State, Oregon -16.5 over Liberty, and I'm going to take Brandon Adams' best bet this week. I'm going to, whatever it is, this is a blind bet.
Wow.
I'm going to go with BA's best bet this week and go against Connors. That's my best bet.
There you go from Mike Griffith. I will say that I do like the Oregon pick. I know that's a big spread in that game, but Liberty has played by far the weakest scheduling team in the country. And as a dyed-in-the-wool Baptist, I don't take any, great pleasure in saying that. But Liberty's undefeated mark has sort of been built on a pretty weak Conference USA slate. So the big number for Oregon against Liberty, that may not be much of a problem for Ducks. I do kind of agree with you there on that. Jeff Sintel, how about for you? Any kind of best bet picks for us here right now?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, a little overlap here. I saw that Oregon Liberty game, and we had to jump on that one. I'm not going to quack about it like Mike does with all of his duck jokes. But I think if that line was 25, I'd probably take Oregon in that one. Connor also touched on something I was going to say in my best bet pick. I would have a prop bet out there for A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, to continue that touchdown streak in the college football playoffs. I have him scoring in that game. I also really like this one. I don't know if this is kind of against our bylaws, but I'm going to make a best bet that Dari comes out of this thing with a go with the flow title. He holds the lead, and he ends up winning this thing after these 6 games are tallied up and scoreboarded by our esteemed panel.
Love it.
I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Connor and I both have been, working hard to make picks all year long. And at the very end, you betray us like that. I take that as a personal offense. I really do. But maybe it's well-founded in my case anyway. Connor, how about for you? Best bet picks to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I got 3 of them. Iowa, Tennessee, under 36. Memphis, plus 10.5 against Iowa State. Auburn, minus 6.5 against Maryland.
See, that Auburn pick, that's the one. That's the one I'm going to go against, that Auburn one. I don't like that. Auburn just, man, I can't. You freeze. Where's his mind at? Is he on the telephone at a bowl site? I don't know. Just going against that one.
As far as my best bet picks go, I got a couple for you here. I also like an under. I'm going to go under 45 in the Alabama-Michigan college football playoff game. I think both these teams want to utilize defense. I'm very suspicious of Jalen Milroe. I don't think Alabama wants to put this game in his hands. Going to try to play that way. Oftentimes, Alabama in these kind of postseason games, they have been higher scoring games, especially SEC championships historically. But I think in this particular case, both these teams see lower scoring as their better overall option here. I know 45 is already a pretty low total, but I like this game to go under that. And I also like Wisconsin plus 10 coming up against LSU. I just think that this is an LSU team that's a little bit of a mess. Obviously, we're kind of post-Jaden Daniels era. I think that Luke Fickell would probably like to get himself a nice little win here. And I think that's a pretty sharp coach in need of a win. So I think it's worth the flyer here, whiskey plus the 10. So give me Wisconsin plus 10, under 45 in the Rose Bowl between Alabama and Michigan. And I'll make those my best bets here for the weekend. And Dari Payro, to wrap up the final show of the year, how about some best bets from the rest of the board for you?
Sure, I got 4, and they're going to be in actual order of how I like them. The first one I like the most is my over tonight in the Missouri-Ohio State game. I think Missouri is going to put it on Ohio State. Ohio State's going to get theirs, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I love the over 49.5. Moving to tomorrow or Saturday, I do like the over in the Ole Miss Penn State game. That's sitting around 50.5, somewhere around there. I love the over in that game because I think Ole Miss is going to light up that scoreboard and that phony defense from Penn State. I also like Auburn. I'm with Connor in this. I think Hugh Freeze is going to easily cover that 6.5 points and try to build some momentum in this offseason going into next year for Auburn. I like Auburn to cover that game. And my 4th best pick is the over in the Washington-Texas game. Texas has great defense, but they haven't faced anything like Penix and those wide receivers. They're going to light up that board. Texas is going to get theirs too. I think Ewers is going to have a great game. But over 63.5, I like that as well. Some points this weekend. Let's go.
Dari, that is a fun way to close out a fun year's worth of shows. And I'm sure that there may be a chance that Dari makes his way to our RS Andrews Cool In at some point. I know we've done this in the years past, kind of recap the season. So if you're a regular viewer to DawgNation Daily, you may see Dari coming up on an RS Andrews Cool In at some point in time to kind of look back at what was and maybe one final check here on the season-long standings. Who knows? If there's some sort of tie or something like that, maybe we'll take it to the CFP National Championship game as a way of breaking that tie if necessary. We'll kind of follow that and see where that goes. But for now, thank you for being here all season long, and a huge thanks to Dari and the entire team at RS Andrews who've given us the great privilege and pleasure of making these picks along with you each and every week. Hope you enjoy the bowl action. Hope you enjoy Georgia in particular tomorrow against Florida State. The number is 20 points, so bet with your head, not your heart, and we'll see how all of that turns out. And, of course, we'll look forward to seeing you before you know it back here again next season for Go With The Flow, presented by RS Andrews. We'll talk to you then, everybody.